Today's lesson is on proportional relationships and tables. Proportional relationships have equivalent simplified ratios. Therefore, when comparing ratios, you must simplify first. This is very similar to reducing or simplifying fractions. So for example, let's take the fraction 2/6. You can reduce that to 1/3 by dividing both the numerator and denominator by 2. If you also have the fraction 8/24, you can also reduce that fraction by dividing both by 8 and getting 1/3. So you can see these two fractions, 2/6 and 8/24, both reduce to 1/3. So these fractions are equivalent. We can also view these as ratios, and they would also be equivalent. The diagram in example 1 shows a series of squares that are drawn on graph paper. The side length and the perimeter of each square are labeled. So you can see the side length here is 1, the perimeter is 4, etc. We're going to use the diagram to complete the table. Draw the next few squares as needed and write all ratios in simplest form. We need to pay attention to this information right here. In the first row, it's giving us the side length, and the second row, it's giving us perimeter. Our ratio has to be the perimeter divided by the side length. So in this first block, we're going to put the perimeter of 4 over the side length of 1. So that's a 4:1 ratio. Then we're going to do the same. As you can see, some of the boxes are completed. So in this one, we have an 8:2 ratio. So we know this perimeter, therefore, must have been 8, because we can see perimeter is in the numerator here, and we have an 8 there. So when we compared that, 8/2, it reduces to 4/1, which is similar to this one right here. Let's do the next one. We have a side length of 3, and we can tell this is going up by 4s each time, so if it continues to do that, that would also be a 12. When we write the ratio, we have a 12:3 ratio. That also reduces to 4/1. You can see in the side length, we keep increasing it by 1, so this is going to be a 4. And we have a 16 for perimeter, so if we compare the perimeter of 16/4, and we reduce that, again, to 4/1. We divided each by 4. In the next one, we have a side length of 5, and we're going to have a perimeter of 20. Keep in mind, it looks like this is a pattern here that continues to go up by 4. So when we write the ratio of perimeter to side length, it's going to be 20/5, which of course reduces again to 4/1, dividing both by 5. And the last one, when we have a side length of 6, we have a perimeter of 24, and we're going to simplify that by writing as 24/6. Dividing both by 6, again, we get 4/1. So notice each time we came up with a simplified ratio of 4/1. So I'm just going back and circling all those. So the relationship between the perimeter and side length of a square is proportional. How do we know? Since all of the ratios are equivalent, the relationship between the side length and perimeter of a square is proportional. Remember that perimeter is just adding up all the sides. So if each side is 1 here, that would be 4. If each side length of 2, that would be 8, and so on. To determine if a proportional relationship is proportional, find the simplified ratio. If the ratio is equivalent for each row, then the relationship is proportional. So let's take a look at example number 2. We're going to determine whether each table shows a proportional relationship between x and y. Now here's our table of x and y. Now keep in mind that y is always going to be divided by x in all of these, so we will always have y over x. So when we go ahead and figure out these relationships, in this first one, it's going to be 4/8, which reduces to 1/2. In the second row here, we're going to have 3/6, which also reduces to 1/2. In the next one, now we have fractions. before we left on break, we learned how to take a complex fraction, which would be 1/4, divided by 1/2. You may do this on your calculator if you would like to, or if you write it horizontally, it's 1/4 times, and you find the reciprocal here of 2/1, which is 2/4, which again reduces to 1/2. So far we have 1/2 in each one of these, and we only have one more to do. 5 and 1/2 will turn into an improper fraction by finding 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11/2. If we take 11/2 and divide it by 11, once again, if you use your calculator, you're dividing 11/2 by 11, or if you're doing it manually, it's 11/2 times the reciprocal of 11/1 is 1/11, and that will also reduce to 1/2. So this first table here then is proportional. Doing the same thing to the second table, we will have 9/3. This will be 36/12. This will be 4/3 over 4/9. And the last one is 4/. This turns into 4/3. If you find and reduce all of these fractions, you will notice that they all reduce to 3/1. Using your calculator, you can do these pretty quickly and find the results. They are all 3/1. So the second table is also proportional. In the last table, we again will have our y value over our x value. So this is 4/8. This reduces to 1/2. In the second one, we have 3/7, which actually is already reduced to lowest terms. So already I can tell by comparing these two, they are not equivalent ratios. So this is going to be non-proportional. If I continued with that, I can also see that it continues to be non-proportional as well. So this is not proportional, the other two are. We have one more example. In example 3, the table shows the cost of 4 different photocopying jobs. Is there a proportional relationship between the number of copies and the cost, and how do we know? So before we left on break, we found the unit cost by always taking the total cost and dividing it by the number, or maybe pounds or ounces, to figure out the price per ounce and pound. Here we're going to figure out the cost per copy. So once again, this is the total cost. So we're going to take that, 18, and divide it by 150. When we do that, we will get 12 cents per copy. Now you're going to do the same thing to the remaining 3 here. We're going to take the total cost, $27, and divide it by 225. For this one, once again, I get 12 cents per copy. So far it looks as though it's proportional, but let's continue. In the third one, I get $55 divided by 550. This actually ends up being 10 cents per copy. Now this should make sense to you, as the more copies we're making, the cost seems to get a little bit lower. Much like when you purchase things in bulk, the more you buy, the cost should go down. In the last one, it looks like it's going to be 8 cents per copy. So in this one, the photocopying costs are not proportional to each other, because you can see that they did change over time. How do we know? Because the cost actually got a little bit smaller with the more copies that we made. Thank you for watching.